So, welcome everyone to Dharma After Dark, the platform where I just share a few of my worldly thoughts. Maybe it's worldly, maybe it has something to do with the Buddha Dharma and spirituality, I'm not sure. But what I'd like to do is engage in a more casual conversation. Because sometimes when we think about the spiritual path, it can become a bit overwhelming. And that's because the goals are so incredibly difficult to achieve. And also just the methods, the causes for enlightenment are not easy. It requires diligence, commitment, strength, fortitude, stability of mind. And this is really difficult in our day and age. And that's because many people feel very lonely and disconnected. And the world, in some ways, seems hopeless. Everyone is so polarized. And it's as if we're just not able to see eye to eye on anything. And for many people, it only takes a few words for them to become extremely triggered. But there are reasons. If we think about it in terms of the Dharma, then there are certainly reasons. I think there's two. One is our hypermaterialism. And this is a significant problem in the West because of our affluence. And we have access to so much. We have so much choice, and there's so much variety. We have different types of forks for every different type of food. We have smartphones, and then slightly larger iPads, and laptops, and computers, and home entertainment systems, blenders, macerators, food processors, microwaves and cookers. It's just limitless, the amount of stuff we have in one house, in one abode. And it's such a stark contrast to the way people live in the East. I mean, in third world places like Nepal and Tibet. Really, we don't need that much to survive. This materialism is a huge burden on our soul. So there's two. There's this hypermaterialism and there's self-concern. And both these things are like a bane in the modern world. And especially, as I said, for us Westerners, because of our affluence. Having said that, it is also a huge problem for the poorer peoples who live in third world countries, in Zimbabwe, in Africa, Nepal, in the Indian subcontinent. Well, that's because these days everyone has a smartphone. And so the entire world appears to them. And for many people, in Africa and in the East, and they see how we live in the West, and they're kind of desperate to come to America, to come to Europe, and to get their slice of the pie. And it's causing a lot of mental trauma for people. It's like in Nepal, everybody's trying to get to America. And so they're just willing to give up so much, to pay so much money just to get a visa. And then the people who can't even get a visa, right, can't afford it, then they risk their lives to get here. Again, it's because they see everything that we have. They're in awe of our affluence. And they want a bit of that. And in some ways, they were much better off when they didn't have access to smartphones, to the internet, this sort of thing. So although it afflicts those poorer people who would like a slice of our pie, and I think even more so, and this is a huge problem in the West. And the root of it is this self-interest. There's this really strong me culture that we have. And the consequence of this, I think, is that many people have become lonely. Our self-concern has become so intense that it's even becoming difficult to have relationships. We have so much choice, right? And that choice is like a poison because it's personal. And our identity is something that we kind of impute upon. Our likes, our dislikes, our education, all these factors that make up this imaginary I, is me. So it's me and mine. And in the Buddha Dharma, and this notion of me and mine is what causes all our problems. And in the modern day, especially in the Western world, then both of these have increased exponentially. Our self-identification only becomes stronger. And this explains why there are so many lonely people in the world. Because everyone is just thinking about themselves. And so when we're preoccupied with self-interest, then there's no time to think about another. And it's really sad. How different the world is when we are only concerned with others. The contrast is stark and shocking. But the way we live is like a self-perpetuating myth. Self-creating fallacy. Because the more time we spend entertaining ourselves, stimulating our sense perceptions through Netflix, through TikTok, YouTube, etc., then the less time we have for others. In my worldly life, then I have to say that the most fulfilling, mundane jobs that I had were those that were involved in helping others. For example, being a yoga teacher. And also, for some time, then I was a sort of music leader, and also I worked with inclusive dance theatre workshops. That's where people from all walks of life come together, with no distinctions between those who have ability, disability, education, age, etc. There are no boundaries. And these were the most fulfilling things that I've done in my life. Especially in this arena where everyone is sharing. And then, so for this YouTube channel that I'm running, then that's very much something that I would like to promote. I would like to promote conversation and discourse, and to hear from others, their opinions and their experience. And so because of that, then I try to answer every comment I receive. And of course I miss some because either I accidentally delete them or I don't get notified. But in general, I think I can probably answer about 90% of the comments I get, if not more. But the purpose of this is to create a conversation, to encourage discourse. Because I see this to be something sadly lacking in the modern world. Everyone's just focused on their screens with their smartphones and their iPads and their devices. And the senses are continually being drawn outwards. I saw something on the BBC the other day, and it was some kind of virtual reality device or immersive experience, I think they call it. And in general, people see this to signify progress in the world. But in terms of the Buddha Dharma, this is not progress. This is actually something quite scary. Because what the Buddha taught is that our attachment to the objects of the sense perceptions is a very dangerous and distracting thing. It distracts us from the spiritual path. Something we call Du Yun La. It's the objects of the five senses. And it's the clinging to the objects of the five senses that draws us away from the spiritual path and distracts us from looking inwards towards the soul, you could say. Of course, in the Buddha Dharma, we don't really believe in soul, but you know what I mean. We're looking inwards, trying to understand the mind, thoughts, appearances, trying to condition ourselves to virtue. But as long as we're drawn away by these outer objects and deceived into believing in the permanence of these things, the reality of these things, then we're not going to be able to find this thing called equanimity, this mental abiding that we need to develop on the spiritual path. So when it comes to clinging to reality, there's two things. There's clinging to self and clinging to phenomena. And the first thing that we need to get rid of in order to be awakened is this clinging to self. It's me. And also mine. But then eventually, in order to achieve final awakening, we also have to lose our clinging to these outer objects, this apparent outer reality. And so you can see here that if what the Buddha taught was true, then our external stimulus, whether it be movies, virtual reality, music, all these things, well, it's not really that these outer objects are bad in themselves, that beautiful things in themselves are bad. The difficulty is our clinging, how much we cling to these things and grasp at them. If we look at the 12 links of interdependence, then there is this trishna. Trishna means thirst, so it's kind of like this desire, craving you could call it. And based on this craving, and then we have grasping. So this upadana, it means to pick flowers. So first we have this craving or this thirst for something, and then we want to appropriate it. And then based on this, we experience existence. And the problem with existence is that existence is suffering. Now we all have identified suffering in our lives, and we know that we don't want to suffer. But the problem we have is we don't identify or recognize the cause or root of this suffering. And so the primary fundamental cause of all suffering is ignorance. It's called fundamental ignorance. This ignorance is a belief in a self. A belief in a self that is imputed upon the mind-body aggregates. But in the 21st century, when you tell people that, then they get very scared. Because the feeling is, somebody is trying to take away me. And the reason why I say it's so difficult in the modern era is because our self-identification is so strong. And then along with that, we have this proliferation of new, more vivid, and more stimulating outer objects of the sense perceptions. Beautiful music, stunning cinematography. It's limitless, right? You have the whole world on your smartphone. Something I noticed recently is that the short videos on the channel get a lot more views than the longer ones. It's understandable. People don't have a lot of time to watch a really long video. But really, a short is only 1 minute. And not only that, recently I encountered something called TikTok, and I've never really seen it before. For some reason, I met somebody and I had to look at their TikTok. And what I found there is that, forget about 1 minute, it's like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. What's happening is our attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And not only is our attention span getting shorter, but the variety of outer objects to cling to are proliferating exponentially. And so there's this continual deluge of information, sensations, images, sounds. And there's no time for the mind just to rest. And not only that, then we're not developing our ability to remain focused. And this is so important, right? Meditation, or shamatha at least, and we want to develop two things. We want to develop tranquility, but also mental acuity. This ability to remain focused on a virtuous object of our choice at will. But with the speed of technology and the intensity of stimulus in our day and age, it's almost as if that we're working directly against the spiritual path. And so what I suggest to you is that from time to time you take a break. Shut everything off. Put it away. Sit down and be quiet. Take a deep breath. Just relax. And try to find a little bit of space to clear your mind, to let go of all the chaos of the modern world. So I don't really have much more to say. Anyway, I'm really tired. I was up at 3:30 in the morning because my mother's not been sleeping well recently. She's been quite sick. And then I've been here on the retreat, working all day long. So for now, I'll just leave it at that. But I encourage you to think about some of the things I've said. Bear them in mind and take them to heart. And see if you can apply some of this profound and sublime Dharma to your everyday life. And along with that, try to turn the focus from oneself outwards towards others. So this is bodhicitta, right? Loving kindness and compassion. And something that's really important to understand is that this isn't just in order to benefit others. There's what are called the two benefits. Benefit of self and benefit of other. And the important thing to understand it is that this benefit of other, thinking of others, having love and compassion for others, also benefits oneself. And that's because self-concern, self-interest, is the cause of suffering. It's the cause of suffering for me, but for everybody else as well. And it makes our world very polarized and cold and lonely. So do what you can to spread the love. And see you next time.